Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Elizabeth Purvis is a teacher of magic and manifestation to thousands of women around the world, leading them to develop their divinely given creative power, especially in the realm of money. As a priestess and student of Western esoteric traditions for over 20 years, she's the creator of Feminine Magic, a set of practices for women to magnetize their deepest desires, and the founder of the Feminine Magic School of Manifesting, where she teaches a potent mix of ancient magical practices alongside modern techniques to unlock your true co-creative power. Now let's welcome Elizabeth to the show. Hi, I'm Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show, where we co-create powerful, conscious conversations on the leading edge. Today I have Elizabeth joining me, and we're going to be talking about how to tap into your creative power to call in anything and everything you desire. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me. As soon as you said that, I'm like, yes, let's talk about that.
Yes, I know. It's like so exciting to think that we can actually have everything we want. You built this amazing business, a 7-figure mentoring business, coaching, mentoring coaches and entrepreneurs and practitioners, and you completely then shifted your practice to focus on feminine magic.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
so...
What?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I remember your energy during, when you were teaching the marketing goddess material, and very powerful and driven and, you were just totally showing up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone from the outside would see you, it's like, hey, everything's working fabulously. I mean, she's got this amazing business. So what inside of you told you it was time to make a change? And tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, first I have to say that this has always been the plan. So it wasn't as out of the blue as it looked. And in fact, people who've been in my programs and stuff, they were like, okay, it's time, Elizabeth. You know what I mean? I actually, I was thinking about this. I mean, when I first quit my job, it was 10 years ago, and I came, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was going to be a fiction writer. There was a whole big thing about that. And I was like, 2 years in the dark night of the soul, discovering that, I never really had embraced what it was that I wanted to do, except magic. I've studied magic and metaphysics for years and years and years, since I was a teenager, as a lot of us have, right, in the closet.
Yeah.
And so,
pulling out the tarot cards and reading them for our friends.
And
yeah.
I was living in New York. I was an engineer in New York, and, I was in a group, and I was being trained in witchcraft and magic and all of this. Like, I was on this whole initiatory path. I was doing that and learning tarot. I studied with some really super smarty pants tarot people in New York City called the Tarot School. But I knew that I wasn't going to be an engineer for the rest of my life. And there came a point where you're like, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. Right. So, but of course that's very difficult and dramatic. And, I had all kinds of stuff going on. And for about 2 years, I was in this place of what do I do with my life, basically, and what's really calling to me. Long story short, I found my way to coaching. I realized that I didn't want to be a fiction writer, that wasn't my path. It wasn't my path. That's one possible way that my creativity could have shown up, but I knew that I was drawn more to the personal growth world. And it was I kind of hit rock bottom, and then I had what I call this manifestation experiment where I said to myself, you're going to make $50,000 in a month. And I did that in part to like get myself out of my crap. Do you know what I mean? Like in part to, if you've seen The Secret, there's the part where Jack Canfield is talking about his mentor and like, pick a number that would blow your mind because you got to like get out of this pattern interrupt. And I made $20,000, and that was my first experience of like, wow. I mean, because even though I had studied magic and manifesting, it was in one particular context. It was like in a spiritual context. It wasn't in like real world. Here it is right here, my life. And also, my magical path before has been very rooted too in worship and devotion of the goddess. That was what I was really drawn to at first. It was more
Right.
like, it was kind of a reflection of like, wow, can I really use this to change my life? Like I noticed that there were a lot of people in that realm who weren't using it to change their life. And I had this kind of like, push pull, right? And
Right.
I hadn't fully embraced it despite all this teaching of it that I've been, or, studying of it I've been doing. And with that manifesting experiment, I was like, I'm a witch. Like, what am I? I know how to do this. Like, come on, this is ridiculous. So I sketched out a process on manifesting and a process on creating clients. And, it was my first experience. And I'm like, okay, this shiz right here. Like, I gotta like, this is in the direction. And it was a couple of months after that I got the download, that I got the kick in the pants, the divine kick in the pants. Because in my tradition, if you accept a certain kind of training, you're going to get the call. You're going to get the cosmic phone call going, here's what I want you to do. And I knew that I wasn't going to be passing my tradition on. I knew that wasn't my role. And it was in early 2009, and I was in Prospect Park, and I'm walking around, and I get this like, guess what? You're going to teach magic, and you're going to build this whole business around magic, and you're going to teach manifesting and write books and all of this. And my answer was, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Like, the goddess and I have always got into like sort of, I have no problem talking back to her. And I was like, you've got me confused with somebody else. In case you haven't noticed, I have been in the tank for 2 years. Like, no, I don't accept your assignment. Basically, is what I said. But I did. I was like, okay, once I get over the initial sort of like, I don't know, 2x4, I said, well, the reason why I don't feel like I can step into this is because I feel like I want to put this in a context. Like, I had no idea of the how. And I didn't have access at that time to the idea that it was a lot closer than I thought. So I'm like, all right, I am going to become a business coach, and I'm going to use all of these tools in that context. So I'm going to use that as a way to kind of get myself from point here to point there, because I from a consciousness perspective, I was definitely not at the point where I'm like, yeah, I see myself as this big teacher and I'm going to go teach magic. Like, and there were other things too. There was other sort of like baggage around this too. So it was always part of the path. And it's interesting how our minds throw up objections, right? That was one. But, as I was business coaching over the course of, I guess, 2009 to 2016, 7 years, 8 years, whatever it was, I knew that there was going to come a point where I had to be like, close the one thing and start on the new thing. There comes a point where you just have to do that. Like, there's no getting around.
So well, and we're always growing and changing. And if you, you gotta keep up-leveling your own life. Stretching yourself.
And we get the signs, right? I had all kinds of signs that it was time.
Okay, I want to hear what these signs were, just so people can maybe look at their own life and say, oh, so that is a sign.
If something feels really hard, that's a problem. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I want to be careful because people think it's all like, women want ease and grace. We want ease and grace. We want, there's this illusion that it's always going to be easy all the time, and it's not going to, right?
No.
And yet if something is no longer lighting you up, and it feels like a struggle, I truly believe, and this was something as I was growing up, that I had the push pull around. It's like, can we really do what we want? Can we do what we love and be prosperous? Can we do what we love? Can we truly be fully actualized in the world? And the answer is yes, we can. Yes.
Yeah.
So I definitely fell into that, like, well, there's always a million reasons. Like, I've created this thing and people see me in a certain way. And, I've invested all this time, energy, and attention into this, but it wasn't flowing. And it wasn't, I also had set up structures in my business that were just not sustainable. The business model I had was not sustainable. And it was not in alignment with what I knew I'm here to do. I know that I'm here to be the channel, to be the one teaching and spreading the wisdom and, serving hundreds of thousands of people. And the structures I'd set up just don't support that.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing too. And I know that, some people will relate to this, even though it's difficult to embrace. I truly believe that we always know. We always know. In magic, as I teach it, this is a path of self-authority. You're learning from somebody and you're receiving their wisdom, and you're the one who has free will. You have choice. You are the one calling the shots. You're the one living your life and walking your path and making all the mistakes and doing all the awesome stuff, right? And we always know. And when I allowed myself to sit and listen and get quiet, it was clear. Yeah. And then it becomes, are we gonna actually step over the line?
Right. Because all of these things come in our head. Our ego gets in there and, oh, I don't have enough money, or what are people going to think, or how am I going to make that jump?
Right.
Yeah.
For me, and this has happened, this is a pattern, right? One of my old mentors used to say, if it happens once, okay. If it happens twice, if it happens 3 times, it's a pattern. Yeah. And for myself, and I know others can relate to this too, I tend to need, and I'm getting much better at this, but there are some times where I have needed to be pushed to the absolute point of discomfort before I make a move. Mm-hmm. I notice with interest that when I don't do that, things are amazing. My husband is a great example. Both he and I were basically engaged to other people. No. And I had one of those real turning point moments of like, are you going to go through door A or door B? And I knew that door A was the right door. And so I quickly closed door B with love, because the person I was with is amazing and I loved him and all of that. But he wasn't the right person. And it was so instantaneous. I was literally sitting in an airport in Barcelona going, I can't do 2 long distance relationships. Oh geez, my hand is forced here. Easiest, smoothest thing ever. Because I just was like, nah. But that's not often how it works, because our ego mind gets all in the way. But what happens is, I mean, for myself, it just gets really painful. It gets painful. Before I quit my job, it was like, oh my goodness, I literally cannot be in this another moment. Anything is better than this, right? And I wasn't at that point in Goddess Business School, because I love my clients and I love my people, I love my people and I love what I created. But it was like, your essence knocking on the door going, I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm going to sit here and keep nibbling at you and nibbling at you. And then I'm going to dial up the nibbling until you say yes. And that's, it's like, you can kind of be like, you can stay in the struggle. This is part of what we teach in feminine magic. It's like, you can stay in the struggle or you can surrender. You can surrender. Be like, okay, so that's a little bit about the point A to point B. And also looking back, we're all on the growth path. Mm-hmm. And over the past year and a half or so, I've been on an intense growth path around some stuff in relationships over the past 18 months plus. And I can clearly see now that I needed to say yes to that growth and go through that growth before I really, and there was no way I didn't see that before then, but now it all makes sense in hindsight. It's like, okay, you really had to do the inner house cleaning around this before you could really, really step forward. But, I also look back to 5 years ago and I knew that it was something I was avoiding there. You know what I mean? On the always no front. So, to really drill this down, what I have found over and over and over again, and it's so funny because I mean, we go through the same stuff that we teach about. The more we listen to really, really listen and are honest with ourselves, then the faster we can go. The struggle comes from being in that inner battle with the voices in our head and the parts of us, the very human, amazing parts of us that want us to stay in the same place.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Say there are people listening that they're at that turning point where they know they have been listening to the messages and they're ready to take that leap or that next step. And then they get stuck because they're finding that they're feeling limited in their resources, or they don't see like the bridge.
Yes.
I mean, that's like a precarious situation. How do you release one and move to the next when you have no safety net?
Yes. What a great question. You actually, how I would answer that is you actually do have a safety net in the form of universal law and universal principles. And we want to be careful because it's not about, oh, the divine's just going to take care of me.
Yeah. Like the fool in the tarot deck,
right.
Stepping up.
It's like it's great gravity. One of my mentors says, if you jump off a cliff, you're going down. Like it's just gravity's going down. And it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. But there are certain universal principles that really, really help us with this. In terms of money and resources, especially, because this is the place where people get stuck the most. And it's understandable because the need for security and the need for stability and the need for all of that is that's the baseline, right? Nothing moves in our minds without that. So first of all, if you're in that spot, be super compassionate with yourself. If you're in that place and you're like, why can't I move forward? Well, there are mechanisms within you that are making it really freaking difficult. So and just
right.
Be compassionate with yourself about. In Feminine Magic, we talk a lot about what I call the two halves of the manifesting equation. And this is really the work of magic. And then we'll circle back to the, how do you bridge that gap?
Mm-hmm.
The viewpoint of magic is that we are divine. Like it's not a metaphor. Thou art goddess. In my tradition, thou art goddess. I am divine. We are of the same stuff. We are of the same creative life force energy as God, goddess, whatever. That's pretty freaking big deal. If we really think about that. And that was the kind of thing that was like the initiate secret behind like 17 closed doors and all kinds of ceremony and everything, is that awareness. And it's the awareness that you either, receive it or not. You receive it when you're ready to receive it. But we have this piece, right? Thou art goddess, thou art divine, thou has the same creative power as the divine. We are also born in these beautiful human bodies. It's like this Course in Miracles says, we are having a spiritual experience in a physical body. Yeah. And that physical body has all kinds of mechanisms and fun things to do what it needs to do. Right? And one of them is that, when we have experiences, we are actually set up to recreate the same experience over and over again to keep us in a place that our human brain knows that we can survive. It's like if you're used to living on the edge financially, one of the reasons why you keep recreating that, your brain keeps recreating that, it's because it has equated survival with being on the edge financially. It's really interesting. It's like, it doesn't like we as conscious human beings go, wait, this is messed up, but your critter brain is going, oh, I know how to get through that experience. I know how to survive that experience. So let's keep that around.
Oh boy, that sounds like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and that's like a nutshell version of a very big thing, right? But that's
Right.
essentially what's happening, and I find that super useful to know. And I received that awareness through some of my training in neuro linguistic programming, um, because we can have a lot of compassion for ourselves. I also find some magicians are of the ego needs to be beat into submission, the critter brain and the subconscious needs to be like wrestled to the ground as a bear or something.
Right.
And I really don't find that I've gone that route, the let's be mad and hate ourselves route, like, and like be in the struggle. I've done that. And what I find is that the more that we can accept and embrace and see the positive intention and see what's really going on, then we can be in a higher awareness. We can be in the place I call magician brain, where you realize, wait, this experience is not who I am. It's not all of who I am. In fact, I can see myself from,
Mm-hmm.
across the room, from a higher consciousness, from witness consciousness, from my true self, and be able to make different choices and not get as wrapped up in it. So from that perspective, when we look at, I need resources to make the leap, right? Bring it all
Mm-hmm.
back. There's a couple things going on. One, you've got all the creative power in the world, like literally in the universe, you have the same creative power as God, goddess, right?
Right.
So there's that. On the other hand, you've got your body and brain wanting to keep you from, being eaten by the woolly mammoth, essentially. And then we have universal principles. We have spiritual law. And two of the spiritual laws that I pay a lot of attention to vis-a-vis manifesting. One is called the law of polarity, which states, you probably heard this before, that we cannot have a desire for something without the way for it to be made manifest, to be here in our world right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a desire for money, I mean, oh my gracious, like what a consciousness shifter is this? Like, and if you look at the law of polarity, you can see how much it makes sense, right? You can't have an in without an out. You can't have an up without a down. You can't have like one sheet of paper, like one side without the other side.
Yeah.
So wealth and poverty are right, to use those terms. You can use other terms, but like they're on both sides of each other. So it's always here. So the money that you want is always here. And so if we have that as our conscious awareness and we hold that truth out, then instead of energizing and focusing, where is it? 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 We can, or like, I don't have it. I don't have it. I don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
We can focus, we can energize. It is here. It is possible. It is absolutely true. I, as creatrix, am going to say yes to this being true. And from that place, where is my opportunity?
Yeah. So I really get the sense of the empowerment that you claim your power
Mm-hmm.
instead of allowing the situation to kind of disempower you or make you feel like, oh, I'm broken, I'm not doing the right things. You
Right.
claim your power and approach it from a different point of view.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
Beautiful.
actually, the first manifesting experiment was the first time I created this framework for manifesting that I call the core manifesting process. Because I am an engineer.
Yes.
I've got all this goddess worship and goddess like spirituality and in my background. And I also have like how does this actually work? Step by step, how does this work? How is it that we create our reality? How do we co-create? Because we're always co-creating, right?
Mm-hmm.
With universal substance, divine God, goddess, whatever your name is for it, and universal law and us. Like, how does that actually work? And so I sat down and sketched it out because I want to do. And that's a big piece of it. It's a shift in perspective from, things are happening to me to I am the one creating my reality and making a decision about what it is that I want. And that's the other piece of it too. Universal substance does not respond to us in the same way if we are 1 foot in and 1 foot out. A lot of times people, they want to set an intention. They'll just be like, I'll set an intention I'm going to intend, da, da, da.
Yes.
Very different energy than I am stepping over the line. which is really what a decision is about. I am saying yes to this and moving forward, and that is that. You will get a whole different response. And in fact, you will be able to see things that you couldn't see before. And that's really, too, what manifesting is about. It's not about, oh boy, 100 gold ingots are going to drop down on my head, because everything we want is already here.
Right.
Gold ingots don't have to fall from the sky. It's about being able to see what already exists. And we start to see, because if everything you want is already here and the money's here, the problem is you just don't see it. You don't see it because you're in the, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You're in one particular consciousness. But when we shift our consciousness to, it's here, I know it's here, and I'm deciding to call it in, I'm going to call it to me, then you will start to see the universal substance responds to that. And you will start to see opportunities that you didn't see before. You will start to see the way. And then, of course, next bugaboo is saying yes to it, because the way will often be in the form of something that feels scary or hard or, is more of a risk.
Okay, so I would love to bring this to an example or use an example. Yeah. And I have a perfect example, and I would love to see unwrap this, right? Yeah. Okay, so recently, a while back ago, I was having this vision of taking the show on the road and traveling internationally and doing in-person shows around the world, right? Mm-hmm. And so that I put on the back burner. And recently, a couple weeks ago, I was invited by a podcast listener to come stay with her in the UK for up to a month. Now, okay, so in my mind, I feel like I have decided to go. I know I want to go September, October, yet here I have the resource issue that comes up. Okay, so where's the money? Mm-hmm. So have I not yet then really made the decision? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really what it is, because you're still in that spot of, I don't see it. And the crazy thing is that a lot of the time, well, first of all, we often do see it and then we discount it. We say why we can't do it, right. That's a whole other thing. But oftentimes you'll either discount the thing that's right in front of you, or you won't see the thing until you really make a decision and you cut off all the other options.
Okay, so for this example, how would I do that?
Mm-hmm. So let me make sure I have this straight. You want to take the show on the road and you want to do it in September or October, right?
Yes, I want to take this trip to the UK and stay with this person. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so that would take a certain amount of resources, and you're like, well, I don't have the money, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What? Yes. Okay. Let me make sure I get this right. So you basically say, yes, I'm doing it. And there's no other, that's it. And as soon as you do, you sit down and you make a list of 30 ways that you can create that money right now. Mm-hmm. And you choose the ones that are the ones that are meant for you to do. Sometimes those are ones that you resist, and sometimes they're the ones that are easy. It's all this there's a lot of navigating one's squishy mind, right? With this. Yeah. But you essentially, how much money is it, by the way?
See, I don't even know. That's the first piece, because I found that when I started looking at airfare, and that already became overwhelming to me. Mm-hmm. So right. Okay. This is just a perfect example of what most people go through for something that they're trying to achieve.
Totally. It's a textbook case. So, yeah. So what I would totally get it. You're like, here's another truth. So one of the ways that we navigate this is to hold out truths in front of us that you make more important than what your mind's telling you. So what often happens is we see something that we want. We immediately have a story about why we can't have it. And that's automatic, by the way. Right. It really is. This is something I learned in copywriting years ago. When I first got into this business, it was through copywriting. I was a copywriter, and I went and got trained with all of these chest thumping, amazing copywriters who I love that do a lot of chest thumping. And
Yeah.
like one of them said, if you get an objection, if you get a yeah, but, that actually means that you're interested. The second that you have a desire, right? And we all have desire. This is another thing. We all have within us the desire to grow, expand, experience more life. It is Wallace Wattles, if you've read The Science of Getting Rich, calls it the urge for more life. Joseph Campbell calls it your bliss. I've heard evolutionary psychologists and like neuroscientists and people like that call it the evolutionary impulse.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, but it's like, it's the part of you that wants more. And we have a whole host of mechanisms in our human system designed to keep us from getting there. It's part of the human experience. You just go, So, yeah. When you look at it that way, I find for myself, and this doesn't happen overnight, by the way, like me, like being like, yeah, I could talk about this and hold it gently. There's been a lot of time when that wasn't the case, right? Like this is part of this is part of the process. Let me be a model so you can speed it up.
Let me go through all of the obstacles and the challenges.
Right. I want to hold the energy of this can be easy for you. But so when you see something and you immediately go, I can't have that. The first thing to say, the first little pattern interrupt is go like, actually, that's not true. 1,000 zillion, kabillion, trillion opportunities exist in every moment.
True.
So when you look at airfare and you're like, OMG, I'm already overwhelmed. And I totally relate to that. What were you telling yourself? Like, oh my gosh, this is too much. This will never happen. Like, what were you actually saying in that overwhelmed moment?
Well, I found myself immediately trying to find the best deal because I'm already in that mindset of not enough,
Yeah.
So how do I get over here to go over here to make like cheap? And then I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many options.
There's so many things. Yeah. So this is great. So I would actually encourage and remember the universal substance responds indirectly to our actions. So just because you start, this is the thing about taking aligned action, just because you start going down a path doesn't mean it's going to be the way. A lot of times the aligned actions that we take, they shake loose in the firmament the other ways that come in.
Yeah.
So a big piece of this is holding on to multiple possibilities at the same time. So when you go, when you start down this path, and we also have to land the plane and start moving. So when we, begin, the very first thing here for you to do is to actually look at, okay, from my consciousness right now, which is possibility A, what's really required? How much money is it going to take? Like actually sit down and map it out and look at that and be with whatever it is and be like, OMG, that's a ridiculously huge number. Or oftentimes what happens is people realize it's actually not as big as they thought. They look at it and they go, oh, like, you get kind of used to, you get acclimated to a different thing. You're like, that's not as big of a deal as I thought, but you have it there. And then you start working toward that. You're like, okay, it's, and that's something that's going to be really important for you. That's one of the ways that we know you haven't made the decision is because a lack of clarity, and I'm speaking to many women at once right here, the lack of clarity is a way to stay in this spot. It's a way to stay in the old place. It's a way to not move forward. It's one of our, the things that we do as humans. So the first step, when you decide, and a lot of times, what I hear from women a lot is like, well, I don't want to cut off possibilities. I don't want to get clear because I'm afraid I'm narrowing my options. And it's interesting. The opposite is what actually happens. You actually have more possibilities. It doesn't mean you never close the door on what the divine can give you as an option, as a way to make it happen. We have to be willing to be with whatever we see as the circumstance and then say, this circumstance is one possibility of many. And when you're manifesting, it's what you're working with to start, right? Because
Yeah.
when you hold those places at the same time, and you hold the, okay, this is what I'm going for, and I'm open, and I'm owning what I'm creating, and I'm taking the aligned actions to make it so, that's when, oh my gosh, like weird miracles start happening, you know? And I'm
Yep.
trying to think of a really good example. From my own experience. It happens a lot, and they're often just like little things. I'll just be like, okay, I want to create a certain amount of income, and because I love income goals, imagine, and I start going down a different path, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, here comes this opportunity out of the blue that I never would have accepted or expected. It's right there, and I can choose it or not. So for you, getting very clear, just get out of the fog and be, okay, I'm going to have to fly from here to here, and here's the amount of money, basically. And focus on that and how it is that you can bring that in. And sit down and make a list of all the different ways that I love doing this too with another person, because,
Mm-hmm.
the universe is trying to send messages to you. Like the divine is going to match what you put on it. It can't do anything but that. Spirit operates deductively, I guess is the word. What you put there is what you're going to see back. So we have to be very clear about what we want. And then the way can come through your consciousness. It can come through talking to someone else. All kinds of different ways. I often find the blinding insights, the intuitive hits, the opportunities seen through being on shows like this, actually. Back when I was first learning the manifesting game, I would call them the goddess winks. It would felt like someone had a message just for me at the exact right time,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the key, though, is to be very, very clear, to say yes, to have a picture of it, and then to start moving forward on your aligned actions. And another key piece that I haven't even mentioned yet is who we be. Who we be. The fastest way to call in anything is to be in the energy of the version of you that already has it. Because there is a version of you out there in the fields, shall we say, that's already doing this. It's already been created.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's funny you say that. I mean, it's not funny, but like you say, this is exactly what you said, the goddess winks, right? So this is actually something that I walk people through. Funny enough, it's called the Envision Experience. And where I get them on camera embodying this version of themselves. Now for a quick break. The key to manifesting is focusing your attention on your big dreams consistently, fully embodying the feeling as if it's already happening. And that's why I created the Envision Experience, a revolutionary and simple 28-day process for powerful quantum-level dream manifesting. You can find out more at theawakeninggoddess.com/envision-experience. Now back to the show.
Whenever we want to manifest something, we want to get clear on what it is. Get very, very clear on what it is you want. And if you're not ready to get clear, that's okay. Sometimes people are like I remember hearing Marsha Weeder talk about this. She's like, if you don't know what you want, then make your first, dream, because she uses the language of dreaming. Like make your first dream be, what's my dream?
Yeah.
Which I think is really useful. But once we know, making a decision, and I call that claiming it. I think you used that language earlier, like I claim it. As we say in feminine magic, it is done, it is done, it is done. It is done, it is done, it is done. Right? Mm-hmm. And when we do that, whole energy shifts. And then I just want to say too, things like intentions are very, very useful. It's not like they're not useful at all. I'm not like down on intentions. We just want to know when we want to use them. So it is done, it is done, it is done. I've made a decision. Then the next step is to look at, and the next two steps I kind of work with in tandem. Step 3 is to release attachments, to let go. Step 4 is to step in or embody. Mm-hmm. So in order for us to embody the version of us that already has it, in order for us to embody the vibrational signature of the one that's already has the thing that we want, we have to let go of something. And there's always like a gabillion things to let go of, right?
Right. Like safety and
like
security and
like the belief it's not possible.
mm-hmm.
Like the knee-jerk reaction that we have as humans, which we don't have to judge it or make it bad or wrong or whatever. We just notice, okay, that's happening. I want to step out of that energy and be in this, what are we choosing to energize instead? So, and other things too, like letting go. Letting go is, I call it the linchpin of manifesting. Because if we don't have what we want, there is something that we're attached to or we've been holding on to that's keeping us from receiving it. Always. And that's really big and broad, but again, part of the game is discovering what it is. Right? So, but we can, one of my favorite ways to let go is actually not to focus on that as much as focusing on what am I embodying? Go right to step 4, go right to the energy of as someone who is traveling the world and taking the show on the road, what are her beliefs? What are her emotions? You can really, really drill down. Mm-hmm. And then you can ask yourself, who's already doing this? And there's so many people. I'm thinking there is a podcast. It's a husband and wife team. It's a podcast on how to, live the mobile lifestyle as a husband and wife team, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, there's always people out there who've created it already or something very close to it. And you can actually go and look at, like, even from their pictures, you can have a sense of what is the energy that they're in. What is it that they're embodying or carrying? So and when we do that, that's when we're able to see the different opportunities. That's when the opportunities start coming in fast and furious. Like, oh my gracious, like this was your time.
Yeah.
And that brings me to step 5, which is what I call receive the way in which it's going to happen. And it's really, really important that because you guys have all heard, like, let go of the how. You don't need to know the how. This is the proper place for the how.
Yeah.
Whenever I heard that, this is the engineer in me again. Whenever I heard that, I was like, well, what's the order of operations here? When we fully step into having the thing and being the thing and embodying that, that's when we receive the how. And then we take aligned actions to let it in. And that's really about allowing. This is another couple of important distinctions that I make. So many people, I know you can relate to this, like type A, hustle, are in the old, like, make it happen paradigm.
Yes.
And a lot of the time when we look at what really is required to manifest something, it's not, sometimes you're absolutely going to be hustling. Like, I am not, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you're going to eat bonbons all day, every day or whatever. But a lot of times the actions that we have to take, what's being asked of us in order to let in what we want, the mental shenanigans that we put ourselves through over it are 20 times as stressful as the thing itself.
Right. It's like the shadow. You see the shadow and it looks so big, but it's not really.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure that if you really got clear, you had a clear picture and you're like, oh, it's going to take me, I don't know, $30,000, which is could be a big scary number to do this. Once you sort of like kind of recalibrate to that and be like, well, that's what it is. It is done, is done, is done. I'm going to be, this is done already. I'm already it. You will see the opportunities. And when you really look at them, I would bet a milkshake, several milkshakes, that they're not that hard, right?
And they're probably things that we're already doing, just maybe a little bit differently. Yeah.
So for money breakthroughs, because I still love teaching on money, I will always, teach women on money. And we just launched a big money magic immersion.
Money. Yeah.
Yeah. Where a lot of the stuff that I was teaching in the business coaching realm, it's like we instead of me teaching the nitty gritty fiddly bits on how to do that, I teach the nitty gritty fiddly bits on the spiritual piece, and people can find the fiddly bits from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for many, many people, the answer to receiving a certain amount of money is to create something and sell it. And oftentimes, you know, they can create something and sell it for a lot more than they've been doing. You know?
Right.
So if you have to call in $30,000 and you're a coach, practitioner, healer, create something that you can sell for $30,000, which is actually the knowledge of how to do that. When I got started, I was one of the first people teaching how to do that. Now it's everywhere. Everyone and their mom teaches how to do it. And I'm glad. I am thrilled. I am like, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
that's an example. Like the how is just not all that. It's our mental gyrations around it. And so there's one more step that we do in the core manifesting process that is is my favorite part, actually. And it's something that I don't hear talked about in other manifesting trainings. And it again goes back to our human side. I'm always bringing together the spiritual part and like our human part. Our human part has this really wackadoo thing that it does. And we've all experienced this. If you've ever grown up with your mom and then you get to be a teenager and you start talking like your mom, you're like, oh my gosh, Helen just came out of my mouth.
Yeah. I sound like my mother.
I sound like my mother. Holy crap. Like there's my mother. And like I'm with my husband and like a Lelandism will come out of my mouth. And even my daughter now, like I say things that sound like her. So that happens because as human beings, we're actually wired to model and pick up what's in our environment. If you want to create something without having to like, kind of like without even having to lift a finger, it sounds dramatic and I don't, you know, I mean, you're going to have to lift a finger, but get yourself in an environment where it's normal. It's par for the course.
Sure.
So in Feminine Magic, we talk about making it easeful and inevitable, which is where we put up, because manifesting is all about the feminine and the masculine, right? And one of the masculine aspects is what are the structures that I can put into place that basically create a little environment for me that will allow me to just kind of be pulled toward what I want in spite of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So create a container that will help you receive that or get that.
And it can be anything from accountability. I mean, there's all kinds of like super practical things you can do. Right. It can be, I mean, one of my favorites is just getting myself around energetically the people who've already done it. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing is by way of the internet and podcasts like yours and all of this, we can actually do that without having to be near them physically. I mean, obviously getting yourself in a mastermind or whatever is like awesome. I've gone to seminars in the past where I've just gone, holy crap, if we all stayed in this room for 30 days, we'd all be like millionaires.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Because the energy is so high and the environment is set up, but you can start to recreate that. You can just ask yourself, so what are the things that I've got set up? And for me, I get really clear, what is the consciousness? And I find people, you know, and some of this is divinely guided too. You ask constantly, show me X, show me Y, show me whatever. And I just have them in my brain. Like I just listen to them every free moment I have.
Yes.
And something as simple as that, it will start to change. It will start to take hold, you know? So that's the last piece. As much as possible, how can you set up your environment? How can you create, you know, your physical space, your mental space, the people around you? How do you create that in such a way that it's going to really pull you in the direction of what you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you start vibrating at the higher frequency, mm-hmm. and then you become more attractive. Yeah. I love that.
And it all works together. That's the other thing. When I was downloading, creating, what have you, Feminine Magic, I really looked at teachings around manifesting and was like, what's missing? Like, what am I kind of having quibbles about? And one of them was around thoughts, this idea that your thoughts become that your thoughts create your reality. I'm like, well, I'm a lot more than a head on a stick. Thank you very much.
Right.
So, yeah. So in Feminine Magic, we focus on like the holistic picture, the whole picture. And when you start to knob twiddle in one area, other areas start to change. So if you're having trouble staying in the right thoughts, so to speak, because your thoughts, I mean, your thoughts account for a lot. It's not for nothing. People say your thoughts create your reality. But if you can't control your thoughts, if you're struggling with that, get yourself around people who are naturally going to lift you up. Put the message in your brain. If you can use your emotions to generate energy in your body that can then be used for particular purposes, right? So that's another thing I would say, because if we get back to step 4, who we be, who you're embodying, that's everything. That's your thoughts, your emotions, your physical system, the people around you, your spirit, what your essence wants. It's all of that. And so it's cool because it gives you a lot of things to, if you're struggling in one, you can use the others to support you. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah, and I love how you approach it from an experiential standpoint. Like,
Yeah.
it's just trying different things. And I also love how, as you were describing the process, how intuitive it is, and that
Yeah.
we do already know the answer. It's
We do.
that we have to kind of turn down everything outside of ourselves, turn down the fear inside, and simply allow whatever the answer is to come up, and
Yep.
then be willing to take even the slightest step in that direction.
That's exactly right. And I tell you, like, I mean, when I act on those voices quickly, everything is smooth.
Yeah.
When I do not, it's trouble.
Right.
It is just that. I mean, I am not a big fan of black and white thinking. Like, manifesting is about a zillion possibilities, but there's always certain things in this realm that really are kind of like either or instead of yes and that's one of them I found for myself personally. When I listen and truly listen, which requires radical self-honesty, because we also know when, is like talking smack. Like, we know
Yeah.
the difference when we're really honest. Sometimes it's hard to hear. Like, it's because I don't want to discount, because people are like, how do I know the difference between spirit and ego? Right. First of all, taking the frame of I always know, that right there is going to help you like a zillion fold. And then this is a practice. And that's also how I look at manifesting. I am very, I love 30-day plans. We have this 30-day manifesting game plan. Like, I love tangible results. I love being in my physical body and like, having the physical experience as a spiritual being. And I see all of this as a practice and an ongoing thing. One of my visions is that manifesting becomes like as popular as yoga, and everyone's got their manifesting practice that they're doing on a regular basis, like their regular conscious co-creation practice. So be gentle with yourself. When you're moving towards something, it is already here. It is done. It is done. It is done. If you make a decision, it is done. Now you get to be the magician and you get to practice all of these skills that allow you to call it in. And I told myself that way back at the very beginning, in 2009, where I'm like, I've had enough of this. It was the very beginning of 2009. I'm like, I've had enough of this. This is ridiculous. I'm going to make $50,000. I said to myself, this works. Like, I sketched out my little process, which looked very different then, but I sketched out my little process. I was like, well, this works. I know that it works. I see people doing it. I'm not going to get in the conversation about does this work or not. If I don't receive the outcome, it just means that I need more practice.
Little tweaks.
Yeah, I need more practice. I need, it's like, and that gives us, I'm always looking for, how do I release resistance?
Yes.
Right? Always looking for, how do I release the struggle? And this goes all the way back to, old school magical training that I got back in the day. Magic follows the path of least resistance. Energy follows the path of least resistance. So I'm always like, how do I allow myself to be less and less of the struggle while still, being the magician, being the coach, the conscious co-creatrix, right? Being the one in the driver's seat.
Yes, because we are usually the one big thing that gets in our way of everything we want. It's like
we are.
Yeah. It's like it's there. And we're like this brick wall between us and that thing that we want. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy the gymnastics and the struggle that we put ourselves through, and these hoops that we tell ourselves that we have to jump over or jump through to get to that thing,
Yeah.
when it's really not that hard.
Really not that hard. And the cool thing is that the more, this is again why I love manifesting as a practice, is the more that you're on the path, the more you just see. You see yourself doing that. One of the things that we have as a gift for people is called the 4 manifesting tools. There are 4 tools that we have within us that really move the needle. One is perception, the filter, the story, what we perceive, right? And I honestly feel that all creation gets down to perception, because our reality is created through our perception. We change our reality in like 2 seconds by changing our perception. The second one is energy, how we use and direct our energy. The third is faith. Faith is our willingness to take action on something we can't see, and that's super critical.
That's huge. Yes.
It's huge. It's huge. I had a mentor tell me that, again, at the same time that I was doing all this early stuff, she said, Elizabeth, your success in life depends on your willingness to take action on that which you can't see. And that's, about making a higher truth more important than the circumstances. And then the last one is choice. The last one is choice. So we, part of the game here in our manifesting practice is learning how to use these 4 things. And I invite everyone to see it as a beautiful, awesome game, to see it as this like, oh my goodness, I have been gifted with the same power as the gods. And now I get to figure out how to use it, and it's frustrating because we feel we don't have what we want yet. But when we come at it from that standpoint, we're like, okay, I've got these, here's kind of what's on the playing field and what is it that I know, and start making different choices based on that. And if you keep going, then it's inevitable that you will create either what you want or something so much better than you ever could have expected.
Right. Yeah. Taking those steps into the unknown. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm excited for you. I want to see what happens when you start traveling.
I know, right? I am making my decision. Today I'm going to take the first step. So I'm going to make the decision. I am going to the UK.
Yes. We've decided, just go find out, what, one possibility is for what it would cost, in terms of the investment. And, it's there. It's there. It's there. The way is there.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for joining me today. This was a juicy, goddessy conversation. I love it. So
I agree. Love it. Thank you.
And lots of things that people can take away and start using right away. Go out there and claim what you want, ladies and gentlemen.
And gentlemen,
goddesses.
Yes. We love dudes. I just market to women, but we actually have some men in feminine magic. We have couple of really cool men in feminine magic.
Yeah.
Fine, surrounded by women.
Yes, we have some awesome men watching the show too. They come out of the woodwork every once in a while, out of hiding, but yes. But thank you. I appreciate it. And yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Bright blessings.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.